I think the way we're going to structure this session is Congressman Tonko is going to give a few remarks. If there's time, he's going to open it up for questions. But at this point, let me welcome Congressman Tonko to the stage.
Good to see you. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Janet, for the kind introduction. It's a great opportunity to be here. I thank you, Janet, and C2ES and all the other sponsors for the opportunity to share some thoughts on what is the issue of the day for so many. My name is Paul Tonko, as you heard, and I serve as chair of the Environment and Climate Change Subcommittee in the House, and also am serving on the Energy and Commerce Committee because of that assignment, and the Natural Resources Committee and Science, Space, and Technology. So they're all the policy areas that would address in a great way the subject of climate change and carbon pollution reduction. I've spent my career working on energy issues, and the level of public engagement, especially on the issue of climate action, has never been this high before. So I'm encouraged. The young people demanding action are inspiring, and they are right. Our nation's leaders have failed them. The decisions being made and the climate pollution being dumped into our atmosphere today will still be there decades from now. Its effects will last even longer. We are already experiencing the consequences of climate change, which we know will increasingly impact every aspect of our lives and our economy if we continue to bury our heads in the sand. How our elected officials respond to this rising crisis will define our nation and our collective future. While I cannot speak for the entire federal government, at least in the House of Representatives, we will no longer accept denials of settled science or quibbling over the human role in driving it. It's time for us to move away from these bad faith arguments and focus our energy and attention on building solutions, sound solutions. I should mention here that we are already working to advance achievable near-term climate solutions in the House that would promote efficiency, weatherization, grid modernization, energy R&D, and EV charging infrastructure, amongst others. I am hopeful that these more modest measures will attract bipartisan interest and support, and together they will make a meaningful difference in stemming the climate crisis. But this is only a small part of our work to address the full scope of this given crisis. We also need to develop the next comprehensive climate bill, something I have some news to share with you today. It has been a decade since Congress last attempted such an effort. So for more than a year now, we have been moving pieces into place to jumpstart this undertaking once again. We didn't know at that point who would hold the levers of power in Washington. We did know, because we respect and listen to science, that this issue cannot wait for politics. During this time, we have engaged with hundreds of experts and stakeholders, including businesses, labor organizations, the environmentalist community, think tanks, and other members of Congress for their input on how to best design the next comprehensive climate legislation. We have studied past efforts so as to better understand why we failed 10 years ago, what has changed over the past decade, and how will we be able to build the coalition of supporters in order to succeed this time around. One thing quickly became clear. We have much more work to do to get members and staff up to speed about the full range of potential solutions and design decisions. But the good news is the conditions for bold action are becoming better than ever before. Clean energy alternatives have become unthinkably affordable compared to a decade ago. The leadership and policy commitments of many states and local governments and businesses are vastly more ambitious. Today, more than ever, the American people understand the warnings, and they are calling on leaders to act. At long last, climate change is making headlines and getting the popular attention that it rightfully deserves. And I am confident that more proposals to add to the growing discussion are on their way. In fact, later this year, I hope to be able to share more details on a plan we are building based on a foundation of carbon pricing, with complementary policies in energy innovation, in efficiency, in workforce development, and in infrastructure. With that said, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, nothing is off the table. Let 1,000 climate and clean energy plans bloom. But as these plans grow, we will need some basis for evaluating them, a shared framework, if you prefer, in order to compare them and put them in conversation with each other. I propose that we build on our areas of strongest agreement. We agree, for example, that climate change is real. We agree humans are driving it. We agree that we need to build solutions that meet the scale and urgency of this crisis, including to reduce emissions cost effectively and help communities prepare for the impacts. Over the past 18 months, as ranker on the Subcommittee of Environment and Climate Change, I have seen and heard a few other things we agree about, and I propose that we use them to build a comprehensive national climate action plan together. That's why this morning I am excited to share with you my 9 principles for climate action, a framework for how all of us should develop and evaluate our policy ideas. We're releasing these this morning in a special report. Let me go through the highlights. First, our nation must adopt science-based targets that put us on a path toward achieving net zero emissions by no later than mid-century. Once we agree on the scientific targets, we can then craft the policies to get us there. Again, I want to be clear about this. The targets we set, as well as the solutions we pursue, must be based on science, driven by physics and engineering, not politics. That's the engineer in me. Second, we all acknowledge the costs of climate change, but there are also important opportunities that come with transitioning our economy to one that is cleaner, healthier, and safer. We have the opportunity to create millions of sound-paying jobs by deploying clean energy, growing a domestic advanced manufacturing base, and building and modernizing our nation's infrastructure. We can do that while ensuring energy-intensive industries get the help they need to improve their operations while remaining globally competitive and avoiding the leakage of jobs, of production, and indeed of pollution overseas. Climate policy does not need to hurt these industries or the families that depend on them for their employment. We can work together to keep what is left of America's manufacturing heart here, where it can be done cleaner and safer while keeping Americans on the job. Third, mitigating the threat of climate change requires federal investments to help every sector of our economy decarbonize. That means RD&D for all energy technologies, incentives and standards for efficiency, deployment of clean energy generation supported by a modernized grid and coupled with greater electrification and carbon dioxide removal in the form of technological and natural solutions. Fourth, we need to promote a just and equitable transition. We all know about our nation's history of environmental injustices, and these communities are the first to suffer climate damages. It is time to put people, especially vulnerable people, first. That means promoting community-based solutions to engage and partner with people that have historically been ignored, and ensuring that clean energy, that infrastructure, and that resilience investments are reaching all of our neighborhoods. We also need a transition plan for people working in jobs or living in communities that have been dependent upon traditional energy industries. We need to ensure that everyone gets to share in the benefits of the clean energy economy and that no one is left behind. Fifth, we must ensure that our response to the climate crisis is not inadvertently creating more hardship for vulnerable and struggling Americans. We can design policies to ensure low-income Americans are not being harmed by our climate choices. Just like issues with energy-intensive industries, we should not ignore these challenges, but rather work to design smart policies that will mitigate them. Sixth, we also need investments in climate adaptation. These historic storms, floods, and wildfires will only get worse, but an ounce of prevention here can be worth truly a pound of cure. So let's make these incredibly cost-effective investments in resilience and harden our community's infrastructure that exists today, as well as make sure that future projects are accounting for the same changing climate conditions. Seventh, we need to empower state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. Many of these entities are already taking ambitious action despite the federal government's failure to lead. We should not stand in their way, and we should also recognize and support programs that are best suited for local implementation. Eighth, we should seek to avoid harm to first movers. Whether it is a state or a business, early actors on climate should not be penalized. And finally, and ninth, and perhaps most importantly, we need Congress to create policies that deliver predictability and durability. If we set clear goals, and if we send strong investment signals, American businesses will rise to the occasion and meet our national targets. These policies also need to account for the fact that our understanding of climate science continues to improve. We need to give our regulators the flexibility to undertake periodic scientific reviews of goals, respond to changing conditions, and accommodate new developments in best practices and emerging technologies. And that's it. That is the framework I will be using to try to continue to build consensus, a consensus for comprehensive climate action. And I hope my colleagues will do the same. You can find a more detailed outline of what I just shared with you at Tonko, tonko.house.gov/climate. If you have questions, reactions, or ideas, please reach out to myself and my crew. We want to work with you, consider all perspectives, and continue to build support and consensus moving forward. And I thank you again for this great opportunity. I look forward to your feedback in continuing this dialogue. Dialogue will make it happen. There's passion behind this cause. Let's continue to push for federal action that will respond to a crisis of our times. Thank you, everyone. Janet? Are we going to have time for questions? Okay, so I'll just do one.
Yep. So I just want to ask you one question, and I hope you just stay for just long enough to answer this one. What would you like folks in this audience to do to be able to help you achieve the goal that you just outlined?
Okay, I think the interaction right now is so critical. There are a lot of people that need convincing that this is a crisis. And I just heard this week in the news that this year the ag industry is impacted by $1 billion. We've heard about the threats to communities, including something like the harbor here, where infrastructure becomes very critical and where housing and various buildings may have to address some sort of flood mitigation. So we're all impacted by this, no matter where we live, whether it's wildfires in the Southwest or in California, whether it's flooding in my district, in the 20th District of New York in the Capital Region, or whether it's extreme drought that has destroyed some of the crop production. But we're all impacted, and I believe you need to bring to the attention of our colleagues a number of dynamics. We're talking about private sector investment that is growing each and every year. Let my colleagues know about that investment, because I think that is a key signal that enables them to go forward positively by addressing this area. Talk about job creation. Some of the greatest growth in our economy is in, wind technicians and solar installers. So we're growing jobs in a clean energy economy. And what I think is encouraging, Janet, is that what we have seen at this point is that because the history now is 10 years since we visited this issue, when I first entered Congress, many people had abandoned their comprehensive plans, their ideas, their solutions for clean energy and climate response. They are now happy to dust off those plans, shake off the rust, and get back into the fight. So I encourage you all to reach out and equate it to the dimensions that you see in this debate and bring them to the attention of my colleagues. We have no time to waste. I hear good things coming from both sides of the political aisle. With our subcommittee, I think people are beginning to roll up their sleeves, but it's going to take more than just innovation and technology. It needs a total across-the-board treatment a price established on carbon that will provide certainty for reductions in emissions and allow for that price signal to inspire investments out there in the clean energy economy and not define a pathway to the goals that we have, because I think market conditions will determine, in our style of addressing this issue, will determine which the winners and losers might be. And I think we'll be surprised by some of the growth of technology in the years to come. So thank you again, everybody, for the opportunity to join with you.